So it has become apparent to me that there are a lot of people out there that don't understand the concept of motorcycle gear or how to use it. So I thought I would do this video on a few, I guess, tidbits of advice, safety information, or just to clear the air on how stupid people can be, or maybe just ill-informed. So, yeah, here's a few pieces of advice, I guess. I'm gonna hate this video. Number one, helmet safety. So everybody has this whole weird theory on helmets. I don't even want to say weird theory. I want to, I guess this is debunking this. When you first buy a helmet, if you don't know what you're looking for, that's okay. No one walks into anything knowing 100% of what's going on. But you should always pay attention to the people that give advice, usually behind the counter, because they're a little more equipped than you are on this subject. So basic knowledge is a helmet should be snug, right? When you buy a helmet, it's going to be the tightest it will ever be on you. That's going to be slightly uncomfortable, but it should not be painful. So if you're getting any pressure on your forehead, the back of your head, your temples, the sides, your cheekbones are too pushed in, that's completely fine. But you will get the Campbell's kit effect. What I like to say is you'll get this kind of thing going on because the cheek pads have not broken into the size of your face. It will be like a shoe. Shoes are very stiff at first, then they conform to your foot, then everything is just perfectly fit. When you put on a helmet, it's, like I said, the tightest it will ever be. So bear in mind that. It should not be able to be grabbed, and you should not be able to look in another direction with the helmet staying stationary. So if you can look all the way up into your forehead, the helmet is too large. If you can look side to side, the helmet is too large. That also being said, there are different helmet head shapes. Arai, I think, is the only company that does multiple different head shapes, depending on what specific helmet it is the shape of the head. So I know that, basically we'll just say names 1 through 4, right? So helmet 1 is a round oval, helmet 2 is a more boxy, long, rectangular shape, helmet 3 is more of a just round shape, and helmet 4 is typically the race helmet, which a lot of people, you can kind of mix and match pads depending on what goes on. A lot of the times I do recommend that because some people are not created equal. So what you're going to have is a more narrow top head, more fat cheeks or lower face, or vice versa, or something that's a little more elongated yay direction or something like that. So you can mix and match pads with things like cheeks typically. So some people I've actually fitted into a large up top, but this is just a little too underprotected. So what we do is you'll fit a large, but the large doesn't fit here, or let's say a medium fits here and a large doesn't fit, the medium doesn't fit down here, so you put large cheek pads in to snug that helmet down. In the event of a crash, that helmet is supposed to stay stationary. If you can move in it, the helmet will hit whatever. You will hit the helmet. Then there will be the recoil effect of it. So there will be multiple crashes happening at the same time your single crash happens, which I don't know if you know this, but taking your brain or head and putting it in a box and shaking the shit out of it is not really the greatest thing in the world for you. Traumatic brain injury is a thing. If you haven't found out what that is or haven't heard of it, look it up. It's not fun. Okay, number 2 has more to do with jackets and the rest. This is kind of a twofer in this one. So your jacket, if you're wearing leather is supposed to slide against concrete or asphalt or whatever you're sliding against. I can take somebody in a proper fitted race suit, throw them at 200 miles an hour on the pavement, less than 3 inches above the pavement, they will slide to a stop. The suit is actually fitted to them, so it shouldn't actually roll over on itself. So if you have a loose jacket or anything like that, and that rolls, that actually produces a roll of the person. So think of it as actually, nah, that's kind of a bad analogy. I was saying, think of it as like soap, but Ultimately, a taut surface of leather will slide easily. As soon as it starts to bunch, it will catch and it will make you flip. When you flip, you break bones. That's not really the greatest thing in the world. That sucks. So how do we combat this? Basically try and get something that's fitted to you as best it can be. It doesn't have to be glove tight, but it should be pretty snug. You shouldn't be able to take the zipper seam and roll it over on itself and have 2-3 inches, 4 inches plus of fabric. So you should not really be able to move the zipper around. You'll have a little bit of movement, but not a ton. Typically race jackets and everything are designed for a more aggressive stance. Cruiser jackets are from a more wider stance because of where you're actually typically holding things. So buy the jacket in accordance to what you ride, because being on a cruiser, it really sucks having a race jacket because you're constantly doing this. And you're constantly fighting against the jacket to actually be in the position that you're supposed to be in. Second thing about this, armor goes under jackets. Armor is not rated for concrete, street use, or anything like that. I see a ton of people here in Texas, especially, or the southern states, since it's so hot, which I get it. It's hot, it sucks, but you're gonna have to live with it. I do, everybody else does, or a lot of other people do. They buy this, it's basically mesh between armor plating. So you'll have a chest plate, back protector, shoulders, elbows, and forearms. That is supposed to be worn under a jacket. So you put that on first, then you put your jacket on over it, which is typically, they're made for race stuff. Because a lot of things, like you can replace the back protectors in race suits or two-piece race suits, or just, that's what that's made for. A lot of people just ride these bare, so as soon as you hit the pavement, this is plastic. It's supposed to take an impact. It is not supposed to be abrasion resistant. So as you're sliding across the street, you'll notice that the back protector lasts about 10, 15 feet, maybe. Just because of the fact that, like I said, it doesn't last. You can take a belt sander and take one of those back protectors and it will wear out within a couple seconds. You can take a belt sander to leather and you can hold it there for almost a minute trying to rip that thing apart, and it won't. Like, it will have a hard time failing. That's basically the test, or a test, on a lot of products that are being made. They will take what looks like, it's a belt sander flipped upside down. It's made to simulate asphalt. It's a certain grit and a certain mile per hour. So they just take it, or take the thing they are making, they wrap it around basically an arm, and it holds it against the concrete surface, or the pseudo-concrete surface, and then it holds it there for however long, and as soon as the sensor figures out that it has failed, it comes back with a number. That's your feet, your speed, and your abrasion resistance in general. It's a way they track everything. So something like 0.4 mil leather, which is your typical like Alpine Star, or like not River Ride, I can't remember some of the names, Dainese, your typical leather jackets, we'll say, are usually 0.4 mil and above, bovine. Different leathers also have different abrasion resistances, like kangaroo is great, but it doesn't breathe very well. They're all tested rigorously. So it's not something that they just kind of like, oh, it's leather, yeah, Wilson's leather, that's great. Like, Wilson's leather is usually either faux leather or it's like 0.1 mil, not 0.1 mil, like 0.2, I think, 0.3, but it's also not made for that kind of thing. It's treated differently, so it's not good armor. So, actually a third thing on that. Don't buy something from a store that is not motorcycle specific. A lot of things are made to look like riding jackets and all that kind of stuff, but they're not. They're made for aesthetic reasons, not functional reasons. I understand you want to look cool and all that kind of stuff, but it's just not. It doesn't cross over. It doesn't. The stitching is different. The leather is different. Everything is just not made for it. So that being said, once again, your choice, but remember, if you chose the crap jacket, that's your problem. So don't get popped off your bike and immediately turn around and go, well, motorcycles are dangerous because I couldn't figure out how to keep myself safe. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about, which is probably one of the most important things, aside from the first safety tips of wear the proper gear, is make sure your motorcycle's in decent working condition. Always check your chain. Always look at your sprockets. Every other tank of gas, when you're lubing your chain, you should be looking at your sprockets. If your sprockets are worn out and the teeth are very thin or pointed in the wrong direction, like the drive has been pulling them, that means they're worn out. They're beyond worn. They're about to throw teeth, and if they throw teeth, you might actually have worse problems on your plate. Also, chains at that point, when they start throwing teeth, that means they've been too loose for too long. So they might snap and shoot directly through the motor, or get bunched up around the crank, the output shaft. It's not a good time having anything fail just because you couldn't figure out how to change your oil on a proper interval or just do the basic maintenance. Always make sure your tire pressure is correct. Look at your motorcycle manufacturer's recommendation for your tire pressure. Tire pressure is everything. Too flat of a tire, it doesn't actually grip the road. Too overinflated, it also doesn't grip the road very well. Tires are supposed to be a certain pressure. The reason I say 2 pounds under is because when you go for a ride, that friction causes air to heat up. The tire expands. So that'll actually put pressure inside the tire a little. If you don't like going that route, that's completely fine. What I recommend is go for a ride, 15, 20 minutes, do some braking, do some acceleration, come home, brake kind of hard, accelerate kind of hard on the way home. As soon as you pull into the garage, check your tire pressure. That should warm up your tire enough to give you a good baseline for it. So you don't have to take that math into consideration. You could just hit your mark there. Make sure your valves are in spec. There are so many times where buying a motorcycle, like including this one, the valves are probably out of spec. I'm banking on no one's done the maintenance on this whatsoever. Just like when I bought my XS, the valves were slightly out of spec, which thank God, because that thing is a 1970s. I could not imagine if somebody did not have the valves in spec for 20, 30 years and trying to ride it around. Those small things save you so much money and heartache and headache in the long run. Also, I couldn't imagine have a hard time starting the motorcycle because you haven't done your valves ever. You go down the road and now your valves have pulled through the head enough to where you no longer have compression. So there's no quick fix to that. You have to rip off the entire head. You have to redo the valves. You have to put the heads back on the motor. It's almost a complete teardown at that point. You know what's easier? Go home every 3 months, every other month, every certain amount of mileage, depends on your motorcycle manufacturer recommendation. Just check your valves. Get your valves checked. Do whatever you're supposed to do. I know more recent years motorcycles have not required that as much because we built parts more robust, but really like the chain, tires, oil pressure, or your oil, your throttle cable, cables especially, a lot of people neglect cable lubricant. It's not hard to just go down to the store, buy a thing of cable lube, put the little thing on, squirt it in there until you see lubricant coming out the other side, move it around a couple times, make sure you got all that lubricant in there, because old parts fail. And when they fail, they usually fail at the worst possible moment. Like I said, just be safe. I don't care if you like me, I don't care if you subscribe, I don't care if you give me a thumbs down for this, just be safe. That's it, just be safe. Because people give a shit about you, and there's no reason to let them down. But that's my rant. Sorry if I went on too long, but overall, just be safe.